has been involved in CUSW as a member for over 10 years, and has been involved in the member peer support program, a health and safety representative, and a human rights representative, and a trustee of our benefit plan. Today, he will spend some time with us reviewing the ecosystem that is one of CUSW's best kept secrets.
All right, that's me, Shannon.
Yeah, it is. Hi, buddy. How you doing?
It's great. Great to see you. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Seeing you too.
Thank you, Shannon, for the fantastic intro. For those of you who have ever participated as a presenter in any event like this, you'll surely know that an introduction can make or break a presenter. So thanks again, Shannon, for setting me up for success. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. And got that ready. All right. So my mic's good. Let's go to this. All right. So thank you, everybody. Welcome. Today, I'm going to be talking about the member peer support ecosystem. So this presentation is not only going to cover the member peer support ecosystem, which is a very straightforward process that we can use to address any question we may have about a multitude of topics, but is also going to address how I think that we can use the ecosystem to its fullest capability. Now, quickly, before we get this show on the road, so to speak, I would like to mention that there will be a 5 or 10, most likely a 10, because I tend to talk really fast when I'm presenting. So I'll be able to chew through this material in no time. But there's going to be a question period at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, feel free to set aside a paper and a pen to take a note of any questions that you may have. And then I'll open up the question firing range at the end and you guys can fire at will. Okay, so without further ado, let's proceed. Okay, so this is the one pager that we use as a map to guide the user through the two-step peer support ecosystem process. And what I've come up with for this presentation is an analogy to briefly explain that process and ultimately illustrate how we can maximize its potential. All right, because I do believe this system represents a key tool. And as Shannon mentioned earlier, that the kind of one of the best kept secrets that we have. And I think that it's a key tool for a membership driven organization. And if you're not familiar, or sorry, let me try that again. It's a key tool for a membership driven organization through the function of the participation model. And if you're not familiar with the concept of the participation model, then I recommend using this very ecosystem tool to learn more about the manner in which we, the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers, distinguish ourselves as an organization. Okay, and I'll tell you all about that. I'll give you some resources to look into that coming up. Okay, so the analogy, I call it the multi-driver analogy. And to be quite honest with you, I came up with it in the shower yesterday morning when I had a eureka moment and almost without even drying myself off, ran to the drawing board and completely changed my presentation. Now, that being said, do not feel bad if at the end of this session you think to yourself, what is he so excited about? All right. Getting excited over corny concepts is a condition that I've been living with for a long time now. Okay, so not to worry, it's all good. So let's get on with setting the terms for the analogy, shall we? All right. Okay, so we're going to start with some math formulae here. You, the member, equal the handle. Okay, and as a member, just knowing the ecosystem process transforms you into the driver handle in this analogy. So like the drivers and bits in the following slide, the resources available from the ecosystem are very hard to access without having knowledge of the system in the first place. So again, in the starting of the analogy, when you know about the ecosystem, you are automatically become the driver handle, all right? Now, you're not very useful without the driver bits, and we'll get into that and how the analogy narrative continues. But again, you, the member, equal the handle, okay? So as mentioned before, the drivers in this analogy represent the various member peer support groups. This visual comes in very handy when explaining that the many driver bits available in a multi-driver set, as there are many driver bits available in a multi-driver set, there are many peer support groups in the ecosystem. So here in this picture, you can see that on the right, you have all your various driver bits, your Robertson, your Slot, your Phillips, so on and so forth. And then on the left, it's in comparison with the different member peer support groups, right? So the unit, power sector benefit trust, workplace health and safety reps, workplace stewards, right? Those represent the drivers. Okay. So now let's talk about the fasteners, okay, or the hardware. So the fasteners or screws represent the subject matter or a question that needs to be addressed in this analogy. So you can see as we continue with our multi-driver analogy, there is always a specific driver matched to a specific fastener, right? So this is a Phillips. I would have to have a Phillips driver to essentially fasten this piece of hardware. Like that, in the ecosystem, there's a peer support group that is best suited to answer your question or concern. All right. So now that we have all the so now we are ready to apply the analogy to the peer support ecosystem. All right. So we're going to start with step one. So I'm just going to read off the one pager here. Step one is when another member shares a concern with you, listen to him or her with an open mind. Ask questions as needed to better understand the concern. So your support may be the help they need to have the confidence to further address the situation themselves. All right. So let's go through and apply step one to our analogy. So I would say that you come to me and ask me about mounting a rod holder on your new fishing kayak. All right. It has some fastening hardware that you've never seen before, and you show me the hardware. So you show me the screws essentially. To finish the process in step one, I would simply say, that looks like a Phillips driver. And as a matter of fact, I just acquired one to perform similar work on my own personal kayak. So I can bring it in tomorrow and you can borrow it to mount your rod holder at your earliest convenience. All right, so in this scenario, the process is completed. But let's say that I did not have the driver to loan to you. Let's say that I just knew the type of driver, or in the ecosystem, the peer support group to refer you to. That's when we would follow through with step two. So I'll read step two off the slide here. When the member needs additional support, help him or her get connected to the appropriate person in the member peer support ecosystem. All right, so you can see that in my analogy, I was not able to furnish you with the actual driver, but I was able to refer you to somebody who did have that driver so you could address your question. Okay. Or fasten your hardware, I guess. Okay, so now you're probably saying to yourself, great, Jay, you jumped out of the shower for this gem. And the answer to that question would be yes, I did. The process, I would have to agree, is nothing revolutionary or new, and it is very likely that you have followed a similar process to source information in the past. Okay, the difference here is our use of the participation model. And in a nutshell, that means that you don't actually have to borrow the driver to complete the task. See, the driver represents information resources. And unlike a traditional service provider organization, and that's why I use the picture on the slide on the right side, you have a closed tool crib that locks. It looks like I would need a key or some type of authorized access to enter that to access the tools. So unlike a service provider organization, which is represented on the right, the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers is a membership-driven organization and is 100% transparent with all information resources. So again, we'll refer to this picture on your left-hand side. Sorry, did I say right or left? I sometimes get them confused, but the right-hand side is the tool crib. That represents the service provider union. The left-hand side, which is kind of represents our membership-driven organization, you can see that there is no cage in front of those tools. They're open and accessible by any member, right, to use and to learn and to acquire that knowledge. Okay, so in an information age, knowledge is power. And for the purpose of my analogy, tools are power. So that's why I got so excited about the analogy, because it helps illustrate a picture in your mind's eye of the treasure trove. See, the treasure trove of empowering information available to you, the member, in the form of the hardware store. Okay, so we're going further into the analogy. We're going deeper into the rabbit hole here. All right, so if knowledge and information are tools, then the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers has a well-stocked hardware store in the form of the YouTube channel, where you can watch a quick video that explains anything from the participation model, as I had mentioned in the opener, all the way to learning how to check your learning how to check your member contributions. All right, and then we also have Alliance Learning, which I'll talk about in the next slide, and the Innovation Station, which is your one-stop shop for anything to do with running a unit, and also it's also the home of the 21st Century Insights series, which is very valuable if you want to understand, why we're doing what we're doing, why the founding members kind of came up with how we are to conduct ourselves. That's a great story to get you into kind of the prequel to what we're at right now. All right, and most notably, member events like this one, right? Just to name a few, right? So just the fact that you're participating in the health and safety conference is you acquiring a driver, acquiring a tool, acquiring the knowledge that you can use to add to the ecosystem or your own personal multi-driver tool set, if you will, if you want to continue with the analogy. All right, so let's use an example of going to the hardware store. Okay, so for example, if you were to want to take a deeper dive into the topic that we're covering right now, which is the member peer support ecosystem, you need look no further than the Respectful Worker course in Alliance Learning. And this is inside Alliance Learning, which is the Canadian Union of Skilled Workers' very own learning management system. All right, so again, in the information age, this is a very valuable tool. We have one, and this is a receptacle for not just the member peer support ecosystem, which is very foundational and something I believe you should do a little further research into. But you can see here, member participation, health and safety, what we're talking about this weekend, leadership academy, wealth management, CUSW elections, negotiating skills, supervisor skills, representative roles, right? Relationships in the workplace. All of these are very worthwhile topics when it comes to professional development or even becoming the knowledge worker, which is essentially one of the foundations in a membership-driven union. You have to have people who know how to make decisions on their own behalf, right? So a very good place to visit. Okay. So now let's talk about the ecosystem challenge. So in closing, I would like to offer you a challenge, okay? I challenge you to exercise your right to participate in the ecosystem. All right, I would like you to take the knowledge you acquire at this very convention, or the driver, if we're going to keep with the analogy, and take it back to your workplace, take it back to your unit, take it back to your family, right? Tell all your fellow CUSW members at the workplace or at the unit about the ecosystem, and inform and the information you have brought back for their benefit to add to the system, right? Because this is much like the mask, right, that we've been wearing to protect not only ourselves but to protect others. This information that you're bringing back with you isn't only for you. This is for you to share with all your colleagues and co-members. All right, then encourage them to participate in the system by going to the hardware store and acquiring a driver that no one else has yet to add to the system, right? So if you have 5 people in the workplace, then each one of you have a driver. Now you have 5 different drivers that you can handle a multitude of tasks, right? And that's the beauty of the ecosystem, is essentially it's not only to use for yourself, it's a community-based tool. All right, so the challenge should ultimately result in building the self-administered workplace, all right, which means that you and your colleagues will not have to wander too far when searching for the answer to your question, or to continue with the analogy, the drivers for your fastening hardware. Okay, when all is said and done, if everyone is equipped with 1 or 2 drivers, there's no task that we cannot complete as a team, which also means that there's no question that we can't answer together. All right, so that concludes my presentation, but as promised, I do have a question period, right? This is David Pumpkin's fantastic SNL sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the stop share, right? And then you can see my pretty face a little bit bigger. And let's take a look at the, okay, so Shannon's back. Shannon, you're watching the chat line for any questions?
Yes, I have the chat line up. So any questions anyone has for Jason, please just go to the chat and type them there.
All right, and you can come online, talk to us. Let's see your face. Let's see, let's hear your beautiful voice. Okay, talk to me.
That would be beautiful. Then I'm off the screen. Come on. Yeah. Hey, Jay, I have a question for you. If I'm new to CUSW and like working with an employer partner that's also new, like who do you contact? Like who can you contact to get some information and stuff like that?
Well, that's a very good question, Shannon, and thank you very much for asking. So the answer would be that, you know, if I were to pull up that one pager, you'd see that one of those routes is the unit. All right. And I know that there's also health and safety reps and stewards as potential peer support groups, but I believe the unit is, especially for new employers with new members that have just recently been organized by the CUSW, if you fit in that group, it is very important that you reach out to the unit, because the unit essentially is separate from the workplace, but can tie you into a lot of the different nodes, right? Like, for example, they could tie you into the website where there's a list of all the other stewards and health and safety reps. So as a new health and safety rep, as a new steward, I know myself when I took on either of those roles, I had somebody who gave the role to me, but in a new employer, there would be no transition. You would just be, hey, you're the health and safety rep, or you're the steward. So being able to essentially refer to those numbers and, you know, look at the list of contractors and who the health and safety reps and who the stewards are, call them up. Everybody, the ecosystem, everybody participates in the ecosystem. Stewards and health and safety reps, Shannon can attest to this. She probably takes calls anywhere from 7:01 a.m. to 7 a.m. right? Like just 24 hours a day, right? So these people are used to being called. Ask the question you need to ask, reach out to these people, build network, right? Meet different CUSW members, because everybody at arm's length has a different driver that they can add to your multi-tool set. And then of course, referring to all the reference material that we have on the various websites, YouTube, Alliance Learning, the Innovation Station, reading your collective bargaining agreement, familiarizing yourself with the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And then, yeah, like I said, networking. But thank you very much, Shannon. That's a great question. And to your point earlier about the beauty, it is nice to see people without masks. You know what I mean? And I wear my mask, and I love my mask. I got it customized, but it is nice. You know, I have been seeing the people smiling with their eyes, but it's nice to see those pearly white, beautiful teeth, and people able to talk without the mask. So that's why I really enjoy this medium.
And I noticed for us construction workers, you brought in the tool reference. So now that we've engaged everyone out there, does anyone have any other questions for Jason?
Actually, I do have one. It's good to see you again, Jason.
Nice to see you, Steve.
You were talking about roles, and are there any roles or drivers, I guess, in this case, that needs more participation? Like we have our stewards, we have our reps, our health and safety reps, but is there any other kind of facets that need further participation within CUSW?
Well, you know what? I can tell you that there aren't any facets that don't need more participation. All right, because in the participation model, the more hands we have on deck, the less work everybody else has to do, right? So definitely starting at the unit level, right? Engaging your unit chair and saying, hey, listen, do we need any committee members at the unit level? Right. And then starting there and then working your way up, right? Because if you just want to participate and you want to kind of jump in head first, there's a lot of people that will just take you by the hand and say, here, this is where we could use some help, because we're always looking for help, right? But Steve, it's nice to see you again. And I don't, what unit are you part of, Steve? You're Niagara Hamilton, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So they've got a very strong unit, and I know that they're always looking for people to their committees. But definitely they run a meeting. I know Mark Keys sends out an invite. Next time you get that invite, you click that hyperlink and you participate in that meeting, and I'm sure that you'll find something that you can participate in, for sure. But thank you very much for your question, Steve. It's nice to see you again. Hopefully I see you soon for some training.
Sure you will. Yeah. Thanks, Jason.
No problem.
Would you say the website is the easiest spot to get the unit information to make these contacts, Jason?
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Shannon, for reminding me. When you, and I can just kind of quickly share my screen right now and just show you guys quickly about, let's see here. Let's go to, I have it as a hyperlink. I just have to kind of, that's better. All right, so again, I'm just gonna move Shannon here to the bottom corner. So again, my account automatically logs in, but once you're logged in, you would just have to go to essentially the participation, and you can look up units, committees, workplaces, elected reps. So let's say, for example, you're a new health and safety rep and you wanted to link up with a health and safety rep from another contractor. You could essentially just use this drop-down menu after you go through the participation drop-down menu, and you could find, let's find Shannon, right? So we could go and we could find Shannon's number around here somewhere. There we go. So there's Shannon, right? And I've got her cell, I've got her email, so I can go ahead and I can give her a shout and I could say, hey, listen, Shannon, I'm new to this. What are your recommendations? Or this is a situation I'm going through. And again, you're going through the 2-step process. So Shannon, if she can't furnish you with the information that you need, she can refer you to somebody who's a little bit more capable. All right. So definitely the website is your first stop shop. And again, find out your username and your password. If you don't know your username and password, you can always reset in the login, and then it'll essentially go to your email, and then you can reset your password, and then go for, and usually your login name is your last name +1, and then just a matter of resetting your password. But definitely a great resource.
And then I believe we have Mark with his hand up, if you want to address that, Jason.
Oh, nice. Mark's at the beach. Nice.
Oh.
Yeah, grander times, past times, which we of course all will get back to again. Yeah, I figured you name dropped me. I better jump into this situation.
Why not?
And thanks for the heads up. Always positive. Always awesome you are. Yeah, definitely in relation to the question for interest. If you're interested, and I think this goes across CUSW in general, if there's something you're interested in, then the door is open and there's something for you to take. That's the beauty about being member driven, is that whatever you want, you can kind of pick that ball up and run with it, because it's going to affect and improve all of us. So definitely great point in there, Jason. Definitely also for work pages or web pages, yeah, go to the unit pages. And if something's missing, because I know we try to keep our unit page updated, but if there's anything missing, any question you don't think's answered, ask. Sometimes if we've been around for a while, maybe there's a question we haven't thought of that a new member has, because maybe we just have the info. But definitely, you made a great point about if you're interested, sure, throw your hat in the ring, because then that's the beauty part of being about CUSW, is it is member driven. You get to really drive your own interests. So I think just wanted to touch on that point you made, Jason.
Yeah, and let me touch on the point that you made, Mark, which is that the member peer support ecosystem is a force multiplier when it comes to information gathering. So maybe you're asking somebody like Mark, who's got tons of experience, or somebody like Shannon, who's got tons of experience, and they don't know the answer. Well, now the course of finding that answer out now enlightens everybody, and now we have that answer in our essential multi-driver of tools, right? So thanks, Mark, for bringing that up, and please, anytime I'm doing a presentation, jump in, because you're a great guest to have on. Mark's always got great content to add.
And actually, with the both of you here, this is a very good question to be able to access our resources. But with us being provincially wide, a lot of the time where we start isn't quite the unit we're participating in, or where we're physically located. Do you have any suggestions for members who may be running into that?
Well, I'll start, and then Mark can follow up. But what I would say is, that's where the workplace, that's where you go to the workplace and you network with your fellow CUSW family members, right? And you find out, hey, what unit jurisdiction is this? Do you guys get emails? Tell me your chair's information so I can email them and get on their side list, right? Because I know in the past I've had a side list where, I'll send out my e-blast from the website, which is for all the membership that's registered. And then anybody who's working in my area, I would send them a side email. And I'm sure Mark's done the same. He probably taught it to me, if I didn't come up with that idea myself. But yeah, you can always, it's like a home away from home, right? So, and especially if you're on the road, I know from working on the road, it's nice to have a group of people you can go and hang out with in the evening when you're done, doing all your laundry and all that stuff that you have to do. Mark, what would you add to that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll take credit for probably being maybe the first one that did the non-unit member list. I mean, humble as I am, I will take credit for something. But yeah, Jason makes a great point. It's even on, I can speak for our units page. It does make mention that if you're not a member of the unit and you want to be involved in our communications, just like Jason said, we add you to a list and maintain those two separate lists. The only disadvantage there is, of course, if you're not a unit member, if there's a vote, you wouldn't be able to vote on it, but your voice is always heard and always welcome and encouraged. So yeah, if you're interested in the area, you can be part of one and receive emails from all. This is, like I said, Niagara Falls, Hamilton unit's always done it. Southwest has, and I imagine many of the other units has as well.
Oh yeah, well, I know from, like, when I started in Burlington. I would go to all Niagara Hamilton units meetings when it was at, the Legion, the Christmas party at the boathouse. You know what I mean? And any unit, I've visited the Northern unit. I've visited all kinds of units, and they've always welcomed us with open arms, right? Just mention you're a member, and you're automatically in the clique, right? So definitely, network with the people on your work site, find out what jurisdiction it is in, and join up with the meetings, right? Participate.
Yeah, to what Jason's saying is the difference is your unit membership is just where you mail and where you vote. Mm-hmm. Everything is open all the time. There's no limitations. One of the hallmarks of what we provide and what we have that others don't. It definitely says being able to participate across, you go and working in another province, another area, it's still a different meeting to hear what they're going on, because we're still all ultimately doing the same thing as members.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you, Mark. What kind of camera are you using, man? Because your skin looks great. You know what I mean? Like,
that's natural. That's just my natural complexion, Jason. You know that.
That's got to be heavy.
It's got the warm light happening.
Yeah.
No, that's just some soft natural light over there, and then just the abilities of the iPhone camera. I'll be honest. There's no filters. It's just a background. I'm not even touching up my appearance unless it's by default.
Look at that. Hey, that's good for you, man. Good for you.
Thank you.
And I've been monitoring the chat here, and we have a message from Cindy Brown. And she is new to CUSW. She's an apprentice starting a new chapter in her career in her life. And what she's seen in this presentation is basically the ecosystem is the Alliance Learning. What do you guys or anyone recommend how to not get overwhelmed by the amount of information that's actually out there for new people?
Well, again, it was, let me see, that was Cindy Brown.
Yeah.
Cindy, welcome, right? Here's a big virtual hug from Jay. All right, we're embracing virtually. Welcome to the family. Congratulations on your new career choice. You're not going to be disappointed. I love the traits. But so a good start would be, have you done your apprentice orientation yet? All right, your apprentice orientation and then getting your Take the Lead certification, that is dipping your toe, so to speak, into the water and starting to kind of get a feel for, essentially, you can either look at the picture this close, or you can actually look at the picture kind of from a little further away. And that's kind of your further away, your map overview of the CUSW, if you will. And that's what I would recommend as a start. Because again, look at this, we can use the ecosystem actively right now, because if that answer isn't sufficient, I will invite anybody else that's in this conversation right now to add to that answer, right? And that's kind of the beauty of the ecosystem, is that I don't have to worry about giving you the best answers, because just from having this conversation amongst all our friends here, anybody's able to jump in and say, hey Jay, what about this? Or hey Jay, what about that? But that's what I would say is your apprentice orientation and the Take the Lead certification through Alliance Learning.
Yeah, I think the easy, just to expand further on Jason's, because we're playing a good game of tennis here, sir. The Alliance Learning, there is an awful lot there. And maybe just a suggestion is going through this. If you look into it, we can it breaks down into certifications. So instead of looking at this list of courses, break it down into a certification. So like Jason said, Take the Lead is always the starting point. But there's a negotiating certificate, there's relationship to the workplace, and I'm going to riff off the head so I don't want to miss anything. But maybe rather than that, looking at say 50 things, break it down into that thing that you're interested in, because each one will have multiple courses built within it, and maybe that'll help rather than being overwhelmed with the amount of what is there.
See the ecosystem at work, right? So essentially, I set it up. Mark knocks her down, right? And again, anybody is able to jump in, because I know Mark and I and Shannon, we're not the only subject matter experts. We just have our own little drivers that we bring, right? But together we form Voltron, essentially, right? So yeah. Oh, there's Janet.
Hey, Janet.
Hey, Jay.
Yes.
Given that the ecosystem is a network of people,
mm-hmm.
Let's say I have a concern or an issue in the workplace. How would I know whether to go to a health and safety rep or a steward? Because they have different roles, but
mm-hmm.
I might be closer to one or the other. And so personally, I feel it's easier to talk to person A versus person B. But like in terms of the kinds of topics, when might I go to a health and safety rep versus going to a steward?
All right. Well, you know what, Janet, that's a very good question. And my first answer would be that the ecosystem is actually designed so if you went to the health and safety rep with a steward question, they would refer you to the steward and vice versa, right? And that's essentially the beauty of the network, right? But the answer to your specific question would be that if you have a health and safety concern, right, or if you have a steward concern, usually has to do with the collective bargaining agreement, right? And that's something that Janet and I have talked about, kind of the collective bargaining agreement versus the Constitution. But your workplace, you will have a collective bargaining agreement that you've negotiated with the contractor, and that's what the steward's responsible for, right? They're responsible for enforcing that. Whereas as far as health and safety is concerned, like anything to do with the health and safety, the Green Book, your company's health and safety policy, that would be your health and safety rep. All right. And that would be how I would distinguish the two. But again, Janet, thanks for the question, because that highlights the fact that it is a seamless process. If I were to go to Shannon with a steward question, she would simply be like, you know what, that's a very good question. I can't address that, but you should go see Scott Hayes. Right. So very good. Thank you, Janet. I appreciate that.
And if I can just ask an add-on, Jason, I mean, I think you've held both of those roles at different times, if my memory serves me correctly. And David mentioned in your intro that you are now also, you've added human rights representative to that. So where does the human rights rep fit into this ecosystem?
Well, that would be essentially and it's very important that the frontline reps, which are the two people that you would see first, either the steward or the health and safety rep, are aware of the human rights advocate or representative from the unit. But if you were to have a human rights concern, right, we also have the harassment and discrimination policy, right, which is a guide that you can use to go through the process, which, we have a policy where if you're having a problem with a person, the first thing that we want you to do, if you're comfortable, is talk to the person, because 9 times out of 10, it's essentially a breakdown in communication. And that person may not know about how you feel or vice versa. And it's just a communication barrier. So just having a heartfelt conversation with that person saying, hey, listen, I don't like this behavior, or you said something and I didn't really feel right about it. And usually it can just get sorted out there. If you have to involve a human rights rep, right, then you've already gone through that step, and that process would take you to identifying who the human rights rep is, and that's by unit, and there should be 2 per unit, and that would be something that you would reach out to the local unit or your own personal unit to take further, right? But again, you have to try to address the person directly first before you start going through the process. Does that answer the question?
Great, thanks.
Okay. Thanks. And yeah, for those of you who don't know Janet, Janet has worked very hard with her team and with all our members to put things like this together, and we always thank Janet. And she's also a big resource when it comes to putting together our LMS and engaging members when it comes to finding the content, right? Because essentially building the learning package is separate from actually drawing the content. The content is within the learning package, right? So Janet's the engineer of the package, whereas all the content comes from the membership. So thanks, Janet. And I think that was a very valuable question to kind of tie up everything together in a nice little knot, a nice little bow.
And I know our time here is rapidly depleting, but we do have Steve with his hand up. So let's get Steve up here.
Steve.
Hey, not to take up too much more time, but seeing Cindy's question, and as a new apprentice myself, and this question has come up a lot with other apprentices, how can we go about finding out who our resources are for our apprenticeship coordinators for logging, whether it be our hours or progress? any transitions we may be making in our terms or whatever questions we might have.
Yes, yes. So with each contractor, there's going to be an apprentice representative from the employer and from the union. Okay. Now, essentially, what should be happening, and I know it doesn't happen at all contractors, but you should be having an annual meeting with those people, right? Just so they can look over your logbooks, make sure everything's up to date, address any problems with maybe the diversity of the skills that you guys are learning or anything like that. But I do know that it hasn't really leaped off the way it should with all the contractors. Now, for you specifically, or for in the most case, the union representative is actually also your steward, right? So that would be the first person I would engage. I would say, are you my apprentice rep? Right. And if you're not, who is? All right. And that would be the person that I would talk to, because I know that kind of when we started enacting that function with the apprentice reps, the steward was the union apprentice rep, and then there'd be a manager associated with the apprentice rep from the company. But definitely engage your steward, right? And what area are you working in right now, Steve?
Well, right now I'm working in Niagara Falls.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, definitely talk to Scott Hayes about that, and he'll be able to refer you. But you've got my number too. But Steve, thank you very much for the great question.
Thank you for your answer.
That's a good answer, and that concludes our time. I'm over by a minute, and I'm very sorry. I'll pay that back to whoever I owe that to.
That's quite all right. Thank you so much for your time today, Jason, and I